Hey, welcome back to episode 3 of the Advisors Compass podcast. I'm here with Andy Schwartz, and we're excited to share for the third time. Hopefully, the third time's the charm, Andy. But welcome. Good to see you, my friend.
Oh, you too, Chuck. Nice to be here.
Good to be here. Yeah. So today, our topic is going to be on business development, particularly as it relates to referrals. And so, Andy, when you think about success that advisors have, why would you say that actually gathering referrals is such a make or break skill for most advisors?
Yeah, gathering referrals is the key linchpin to building any successful practice. And the reason for it is when you think about it, referrals are the lifeblood of our practice. So we have two options. And when I first got into the business, I had to make a decision. I could either cold call, and if I cold called enough, and look, there are people out there that are really good at it, and people maybe still do that today. If you're willing to make hundreds of calls a day and be hung up on hundreds of times a day, but maybe 3 or 4 times a day not being hung up on, you can build a fantastic practice. I am not that tough. I just wasn't. I'm not built that way. I take things personally. So for me, I made a decision right away that if I was going to survive, then I had to have qualified prospects to talk to. And the most efficient way to create qualified prospects, and I would say the throughput and the success rate, of those prospects, it's always a referred lead. And so I made a decision from the very, very beginning that whether it was a first appointment, a second appointment, a close, a client, someone sitting next to me on a bus, I was going to prospect and prospecting personally, prospecting, and I was going to ask for referrals and any engagement. And it's going to sound crazy, but this will be my first, let's talk about this. And again, you newer advisors are going to think that, I'm out of my mind. And this is when I was an insurance agent. So I wasn't even an advisor, but on every first appointment, I would ask for referrals. And these are people that I just spent a half an hour with, and it was most likely some resident, in a hospital in an on-call room. And I would always end, my appointments the same. And that the ending of the appointment would be, Chuck, do you have any other questions for me? Is there anything else we should have talked about? And he or she would say no. And I say, okay, well, based on what we talked about today, this is what I think, I'm going to come back with, and I'm going to maybe show you some life insurance or some disability insurance or whatever it could have been. And then we'll meet again and see if I can be of help to you. Now you might wonder how I get paid. And the guy or the gal will say, yeah, I was kind of curious how you get paid. Well, I get paid in 2 ways. The first way that I get paid is if I can come back to you and I can solve one of these problems for you, life insurance, disability insurance, rollover IRA, help you with something, then, the carrier, the institution will pay me. But the second way that I get paid, and much, much more importantly for me, is by referral. Because that's how I got here today, Chuck, because, John was nice enough to say I should reach out to you, and here we are. So whenever I sit down with somebody for the first time, I always get 5 referrals. And then I shut up. And again, the psychology, and we can talk about psychology and setup and what we need to be thinking of what the clients are thinking. But I don't say, would you please? I say whenever I sit down with somebody for the first time, because I just want them to think this is normal. I just want them to think that anybody that sits down with me gives me referrals, because one thing about people is they don't like to be necessarily different. People don't necessarily want to, buck the system. Everybody's pretty much, I think, goes along with the flow. And so they don't know how the process works. And then I would be quiet. I would turn my pad over with my pen in my hand, and I would ask them, so who are maybe 5 resident physicians that work here on your team? Or maybe I'm looking for the senior residents because I want to get to somebody that might make money quicker. And I might say, who are 5, senior residents that will be going on to practice next year? Or who are 5 attendings that you actually like the most? And I did that whether I was talking to a lawyer or a doctor and did everyone give me a referral? No, everyone did not give me referrals. Did a lot of people give me referrals? Yeah, a lot of people gave me referrals. I never cold called, ever. And I had really, really good success very, very early And that was the key. There's nothing more important. Everybody has to make a decision. If you want to build a business, you have to make a decision about how that's going to happen. And the thing that we need the most is prospects, right? This is a numbers business. And if you don't have lots and lots of prospects, you cannot build a big business. You just can't do it. And so either it used to be the phone book, nobody has a phone book anymore, but you can go through LinkedIn or buy leads or do whatever you want to do and bang phones all day. Although the problem with that is I don't think anybody answers the phone anymore. If they don't recognize the numbers, that can be a little bit of a problem. Or we can figure out a way, however we're comfortable asking, to get referrals.
I couldn't help but grin as you were going through that because it was, God, it's so crazy to think, but it was 30 something years ago that I heard you say that for the first time on stage. And, and I bought the tape, and I listened to it over and over. And I must have listened to, that tape, all of your tapes I listened to hundreds of times. But I have said, do you know how I get paid? And everyone gives me 5 names. I've said that thousands of times. And I honestly, and this is really for the new advisors that are hearing this, I honestly do not think that I would be sitting here right now today and have be in the position that I'm in and be doing what I'm doing had I not heard that language in the very early 90s, because it was the difference between me making it in the business and I really honestly believe not making it. And I know a lot of guys could say the same thing about that language and about developing your philosophy of asking every single time, even in first meetings. And whenever you do the math, if you wait until the close or you wait until they buy,
Right.
it's going to take decades to become successful.
Right. Yeah. I think of all the people that gave me referrals that I didn't sell that never became clients, it's frightening that if I would have never asked, and some of them are clients that made the biggest difference in my career. I sometimes think back about the referrals I got. If I didn't ask that day, how different my life would be, what those referrals led me to. And it's really a philosophical, understanding, it really becomes, and I figured that out really early as well.
I think that would be a great next question for us to look at is belief philosophy. Talk about, you talk about our conviction, the advisor's conviction has to be stronger than a prospect or client's hesitation. Tell us what that looks like and just kind
Yeah.
of the thinking behind that.
So the first thing is for me, so I think about, okay, the most important thing for us as advisors is to establish a philosophy about getting referrals. Because without a philosophy, we're lost, right? Without conviction, without intention, we're lost. So how do you build that? What's my thought process? How do I feel like I deserve, to get referrals from a client? So here's how I frame this in my own mind. First, when I go through this conversation with Chuck and we talk about what if something happens or where everything is or organizing him or retirement, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things. And there are going to be a few things that I'm going to say in that meeting, even in 1984 and 85, when I had no ability to do anything other than sell somebody a life insurance policy. If Chuck and I had the conversation and I said, well, how much insurance do you have? And he doesn't have any. And he's got a family. And how much do you need to create? And we go through this whole exercise and Chuck needs a couple $1 million of insurance. Is it even possible that Chuck would thank me for the conversation, but not buy the insurance from me because maybe his brother-in-law is a metropolitan agent, or maybe he just doesn't do it at all. But let's assume that that conversation made him do something. He just didn't do it with me. And then let's assume that he either became uninsurable in the future, or God forbid he died. It happens. We had almost every year in the beginning of my career there was some fluky death claim, and I realized really early this isn't just about selling things. This is about protecting people, and nothing could be more important than if God forbid something happened to somebody that, the check's being delivered. So the way I look at it is we've got two people having a conversation. One, his whole career is in the balance of whether he can get or she can get, 3 or 4 or 5 referrals on meetings, the whole career, being able to pay your bills, being able to build a business, being able to be successful, everything. On the other side, you have a person, And I used to always kid when I would do a talk, I'd say, so let me ask you a question, Chuck. Do you think that your prospect, your 10 o'clock appointment this morning, do you think that before they went to bed last night, they said, hey, we're going to see Andy Schwartz tomorrow. What is our philosophy again about giving referrals on first appointments? And everybody chuckles, right? I mean, that's absurd. Of course, they didn't have that conversation because it doesn't matter to them. It's meaningless to them. They don't even think about it. So, but for me, when I put my head down on the pillow at night, what I think about is if I can't get 25, 50 referrals a week, then I can't make this thing happen. I can never build the business that I want to build. So for me, it's everything. For them, it's nothing. So did you ever get into an argument or a conversation with somebody and you weren't very passionate about it. You weren't very well versed in it. You weren't really very well prepared. And it was the most passionate, subject for them. And they were really well versed and you just get obliterated. You're like, okay, you're right. I give up. Right. Well, that's kind of the way I feel about walking into a meeting. I am completely prepared. I have my script. I know what I'm going to say. I know who I'm looking for. I know who I'm asking for typically. And they're completely caught off guard. It doesn't matter to them. It means everything to me. And here's the thing. If you don't get the referrals, it's okay. Because what we have to do is we have to start planting seeds in people's minds that we want the referrals. So every time we go through an exercise and we ask for a referral, even when we don't get the referral, something positive happened because we're telling them that we are growing a business and we are interested in meeting people that they know, people that we can help. And so that when they're at dinner a month from now and somebody says something, it's already in their subconscious. And they're like, oh, you know what? My guy is definitely interested in having a conversation with you. I'll make that happen. If you never ask, 90%, 95% of advisors never ask. They never ask. I bet 50% of the clients out there, don't even think that we want the referrals. They might think that you're too busy. They might think that your practice is closed. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and it was a women's event, and this was very interesting, and I've got to find out what it is. Invitation only practice. So I assume that means you don't ask for referrals because it's invitation only. So I'd love to understand what that actually meant. But to me, I want my clients to know that we are growing and that we are interested in working with people that they care about and people that they know. And anytime I can remind them of that, and there's lots of different ways we do that, it's really, really important.
So a couple of thoughts and a couple of follow-ups. One thought as you're saying that, I'm reminded of a story in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And he's talking about the power of conviction. He talks about him witnessing, and not him being Napoleon Hill, but I think the guy's last name was Darby. Interestingly enough, he went in the insurance business, but he witnessed his uncle have a sharecropper's daughter. They said this little girl came into where they were and walked up to this man who was really a mean man, he described, and said, my mammy says she needs 50 cents. And the guy said, you get out of here, I'll take a switch to you. And the little girl didn't move. And he said, my mammy says she got to have 50 cents. He said, you get out of here, I'm going to whoop you. And the girl took a step forward and said, my mammy says she got to have 50 cents. And he said, the man sat there and looked at this little girl, reached in his pocket and took out a 50-cent piece and gave it to the girl. And Darby says that witnessing that, he recognized that the power of conviction, whoever believes the most is the person that's going to win in any
100%.
situation.
100%.
And so what you're describing there for our listeners, especially the newbies, the under fives, but it's everyone, we have to believe whatever it is that we're saying. And when you have that conviction, and again, Andy, you just exude it all the time that I've witnessed is, look, this is the way it is. And so they're going to buy into your conviction. That's what I hear you saying and what I'm reminded of. A question that comes when you say that, what about the advisor today? So we could play the mind game, back when we were, insurance guys about, well, this person, I deserve to get it because this guy might go and do it somewhere else. What would you do now, from an advisor standpoint? What's the game that we play on why a newer advisor would deserve that referral in that first meeting?
Yeah, I mean, look, as little as you think you newer advisors, you know 10 times more than these people know. I mean, you really do. And if you're having conversations, like really good, smart, honest conversations with people, then at the end of the day, even if you're only 2 years in the business or a year in the business, I mean, we don't realize how much we learn every day, and mostly by making mistakes and embarrassing ourselves. So every day I would go out there and every day I would embarrass myself in some way. Somebody would ask me a question. One that I'll never forget, guy asked me, are these performance numbers pro forma or are they real? Oh no, they're real. I didn't even know what pro forma was. This is like in the, the in 1986. Then I go back to the office. I'm like pro forma, and I call. No, those are pro forma numbers. Like, and I call the guy back and say, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake." And I think he appreciated that because he's a huge
Mm.
client today. But you have so much more knowledge and so much more information, that you are learning every single day. We're like it's like an infant. We're like sponges with all this data, and most people have very, very little understanding about how so many things work. And all these little tidbits. You're in New York. Oh, by the way, you realize that if you're above $7.16 million and you die, you've got, if you're 5% above that max in New York, there's a 15% inheritance tax. Oh, geez, I didn't realize that. Or that, and by the way, that is included to your insurance, your home, your assets. So why is your insurance not an insurance trust? Now, maybe that person has everything they need and they like their advisor. I mean, I'm gonna pick up a very large case next week, and it had nothing to do with assets. It had everything to do with that. It had everything to do with why, what older couple, father died, and we're just going over all of that. So I had my whole team putting together, the whole estate plan and the taxes. We're on the phone with the lawyers. We're reviewing the trust. We're going to take all the money. We're not even going to talk, that's just a foregone conclusion because we are the advisor. And so your knowledge and your information and your conviction about whether it's they need to save money, they need to protect their families, they need to save for college for their kids, all those things, your conviction is very, very valuable, for them. And it's certainly worth, you know, sharing. It's certainly worth sharing. And if we believe, and Chuck, we talk about this almost every episode, that if we're the advisor, number one, then somebody else isn't. So you better be a good one, because if nothing else, you're preventing them from being a good one. And how many people are out there that are being badly served? A lot of them are being served just fine, but how many of them are either being badly served or they're not being served at all? And so, the more people that we can help, the more people, which is, again, it's a beautiful thing about our business. What I love about our business is that 90% of the public does something every day that probably doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. They go to some big corporation and they have some job and they're a cog in the wheel. And at the end of their life, God bless them, they could be awesome people. But I'm not sure if whatever they did every day really mattered to anybody. We are in a business where everything we do matters. Everything matters. When the markets are down and the clients are pushing back and they want out and we don't let them out, that matters because we prevent them from making those big mistakes and we help them protect themselves and organize their assets and save the money and get ready for retirement and not make those mistakes. And that's super powerful and really valuable and I think it deserves something. It deserves to be shared.
I agree 1,000%. And some of my clients over the last few years, more successful and got out of the habit of asking. And the little game I always play with them is I say, look, I'm about to beat you up. I'm going to step on a soapbox. So, just allow me. But it's thing, and this is for the midterm
Yeah, yeah.
and older advisors. If you're not asking your clients for referrals and introductions to people that they know, that they like, that they respect, that they care about, then is it possible, even probable, that over the next 5, 10, 20 years, that they're going to have some family member, some best friend, someone that they care about, that is something bad is going to happen to them. Either they're going to meet that bad advisor that's going to take them for a loop, or they're not going to have anyone, and they're not going to be able to reach the freedom that they otherwise would. Something bad can happen to of all your clients. If you're not asking, guaranteed over the next 5, 10, 20 years, something bad is going to happen to somebody in your client base circle of influence that otherwise could have been prevented had you had the courage
Right.
to ask. And I think that's what it is.
And I think so an easier way to ask for referrals from clients? What's an easier way to help us muster up the courage? So an easy, soft way to ask for a referral would be something like this. So Chuck, I just want you to know how much, not only do I appreciate the business that you and I do together, because I really do. It's you're an awesome client, but I just want you to know also how much I enjoy doing business with you. I mean, like when I look at my calendar and I see Chuck Downs is Wednesday at 9, like, I smile, like I'm looking forward to catching up. I always enjoy interactions. And I want you to know that if there's anybody in your world that you care about, that you think I can be of help to, I want you to feel free to call me anytime and make that introduction. And I don't care whether they're rich people or whether they don't have much money. But if you care about them and you think I can help them, I want you to reach out to me. Now, the reality is everybody gets the joke. So he might send me over to his uncle, who's, filing bankruptcy, and it's, obviously not a prospect or client. But if we help those people, with whatever, little that we can even do, but in the back of their minds, though, they know that what I really want, and they know that, what we're looking for is a prospect that we can really work with, and they will find them as well. And there's lots of variations and things you can do with that. Whether it's games, it's giving them tokens. You have 2 free, referral, givers, that you can give for me for a free consultation. But that's another soft, because again, at the end of the day, whether you get them or not, that appointment doesn't matter. We've got to be asking. They've got to know we're open for business. They got to know we're interested in that. And then maybe 6 months later, you get a phone call from one of those people you asked. They say, "Hey, my cousin needs some help. She'd like to talk to you." Great.
So I think that's an important distinction that you just made there is early on you were talking to those newer advisors, the ones that haven't made it yet, they're still in survival mode. Those are the ones that, look, you got to ask. I always get 5, and now once you've gotten over that hump, it's no longer hammering people it's more of a softer approach, and the referrals continue to come.
Yeah, another thing that's really important when we think about how we get referrals is we have to always be listening very carefully in our
Mm.
conversations. So that, because the names come up, the things come up. So to me, I'm always really, really tuned into what everybody's saying, because there's lots of ways you can ask for referrals that are really simple. We're talking about wills and trusts, and who are your executors, or, who are the trustees? People are having conversations about partners. I always make a mental note. I'll always joke with clients. Like I was talking to a client the other day. He goes, "Hey, yeah, so-and-so selling a business." I'm like, Eddie, I really don't want to meet that guy. I mean, the people that are selling businesses, those are the people I absolutely don't want to meet. And then I'll tell them, I need one thing from you for 2026. And again, same kind of conversation. Thank you for the business. I love you. I mean, it's such a pleasure and it's such an honor for me to work for you. But I need you to do one thing for me in 2026. And I'll say this all the time. I need you to find me one really, really good client just like you,
Mm.
selling a business, getting ready to retire, a hard charging, really successful person. And I just need one. And it's almost like a challenge them. And we kid about it, and I talk to them about it and I remind them. But if there's ever conversations going on where they're talking about this person or that person, I mean, when that conversation, I'm like, "Hey, Chuck, I would love to meet that person." I'm not just like, "Oh gosh," I don't get off the phone and say, "Maybe I should have asked." Oh no, I ask. They might tell me, "Well, let me see. I'll check with them and come back to you." Maybe they never come back to me. Sometimes they do, but again, I'm always asking. I'm always aware and paying attention to whatever is being said, for sure. And even if I write it down and come back in the end of the conversation.
One One other key concept that I can remember, for 30 plus years, you sharing, and interestingly enough, I witnessed this. It was 93 or 94 when you invited me to come and spend a day in the field with you, and our lunch was one of these meetings I'm about to describe. But talk to us about what many people would call centers of influence. The first time I heard you talk about it on the stage, and this is what you called it in person when I was there in New Jersey with you. You called it the concept of the apostles. And
Correct.
so talk to us and talk to our listeners about the concept of the apostles.
Yeah. If you want to grow your business dramatically, you have to become an apostle. And so I heard Zig Ziglar say years and years and years ago, maybe in the 80s, if you want to get what you want, you help other people get what they want. And so, and this sort of ties into this idea of center of influences. I don't think that lawyers and accountants or any other professionals, PNC people, whatever they are referring us business because we are so much better than everybody else, because it's a pretty noisy environment. And I certainly don't think that, I'm so much better than everybody else, that they're coming to me because, we're doing something completely unique. Although I do think that we do provide a unique service and we care about our clients maybe more than most. But the idea, though, is the reason they will refer business, and I knew this right away, was if there's something in it for them. Now you've got to be competent. You can't be an idiot, and you have to do what you say, and we have to be able to deliver the goods. But that's a given, though. So you have to be A quality. You don't have to be A plus plus, but you have to be A quality in order to be able to get people to actually refer you business. Nobody's referring business that they can be embarrassed by. But at the end of the day, 10 advisors can meet with the same lawyer or the same accountant, even on a regular basis. And if one of those advisors is actually referring business to that attorney or that accountant, and they actually establish rapport and they're going back and forth, they're going to get the lead. And so what I always thought about was whenever I hear somebody say, "Oh yeah, every Wednesday I have a breakfast or whatever with an attorney, or every Wednesday I have breakfast with an accountant," I'm thinking, well, wow, that's a waste of time, because you can't support 50 attorneys and 50 accountants. And I mean, how many people have you met in over your career? I know for me, excuse me, I've met so many people. Then a week later, I forget I even met them. It's completely meaningless. And by the way, it's meaningless for them as well.
Mm.
But if I meet somebody that I like, somebody that's at the right age, somebody that I think is again an A player, like I'm an A player, then what I do is I focus on that meeting is, okay, what are you looking for? Who's your ideal client? What's your sort of specialty? What's the pitch? Because now what I want to do is I want to flood the zone. I want to give that person 3 or 4 or 5, 6 referrals in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And I want this person to say, holy crap, I better engage with this guy, because this is crazy. And because think about it, we're the activity people. They're not really the activity people, right? We're the activity people. I mean, we can bump into 5, 6 people a day. And so the idea is that if I open a case, or if I just meet a prospect, even if there's nothing there for me, but if I ask them about their wills and trusts, or if I ask them about who's doing their accounting, or I ask them about who does their PNC coverage, or I ask them about all these different things, I have my list of who I'm apostling for. And if I did nothing else but get a couple of referrals from those guys, that's an enormous win, because now I have 5 or 6 professionals that are working for me. So now they're all out there. So when I'm out there with my prospects, they're out there with their clients, and they're prospecting for me because they want this to continue. They want it to continue. And I think about some of the clients that I picked up over my career from those sources, and I think about what they've referred me to and how large they've become. I mean, it's huge. I mean, it was life changing. And so again, but we have to be intentional about all of it. We don't just go to a meeting and talk about golf and whatever. Nice to meet you. And now we're acquaintances. And then I'll see you at the Rotary meeting in 6 months. I mean, that is just meaningless. It's completely meaningless. We have to be in contact, help them, give them, and become. That's how we become friends, and more importantly, we become important to them, and they want to reciprocate. Now, if I'm feeding, and nothing's coming back, I don't have a problem saying, "Hey, listen, Chuck, I think you're awesome and all, but you're not the only guy in town that can do wills and trusts." And so, what I need is a relationship where we can help each other grow, because that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in growing my practice and meeting clients. And you'll go through several, because some of them get it and some of them don't. But you'll find those 2 attorneys, those 2 accountants. It could be geographical. You'll find that quality P&C or 2. I've got a great, banker, with mortgages. And so, now they don't really refer back to me so much, but as long as also I can get great service for something that we don't particularly do, there's value in that as well. But that's, developing that center of influence, that's a really, really important aspect of everybody's business. But the most important thing is we've got to find a way to help these people. We got to introduce them to as many of our quality clients as we can.
I know for a fact because I witnessed it as evidenced by us going to your country club that day. You had a CPA and a business owner meet us there at lunch. You picked up the tab and you were making the introduction then. So you're not just saying, "Hey, here's a name." I mean, you're proactive with this.
We follow up. Yeah, we follow up. Did you talk to Jerry? Did you guys get together? Was he able to help you? No, we want to, because look, they're bad salespeople, for the most part, these professionals, so sometimes they need help. So we'll help close the deal. We just have to have confidence that they're really good, though. You've got to find really good people and try to find people that are somewhat your age. If you're 40, don't go to the most successful 65-year-old, CPA or trust attorney in town, because at the end of the day, they already have their relationships. If you're a younger advisor, find someone similar to your age that doesn't already have, those relationships, an up and comer, if you will.
Yeah.
They can't be a rookie, but at the same time, you don't want it to be what we like to refer to as zoo-fed bears either. You want people that want to grow their businesses and are aggressive. Yeah.
And you can spot those people online because they're out there on social media marketing what it is that they do. So they're easy to find
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
You said this is huge. This can be huge for your practice. So you started this over 30 years ago. I mean, when you think about I don't know, maybe your larger cases, how many of those came from you being an apostle? And I think a second question, part of that question would be, what percentage of your 2+ billion today that you've got personally under management, how much of that do you think came from COIs, if you had to guess?
Well, I can think right off the top of my head, the center of influences over my career have definitely created my biggest 3 clients for sure. And my biggest clients well over $100 million. So that's some percentage of the 2 billion. But not only that, and what he brought me to, because obviously people that are really, really wealthy tend to hang around with other people that are really, really wealthy. And so he's probably created, at least himself, that 100 million has created another 100 million, just the people that are associated with him, that I've been able to pick up over the years. And when you work with people like that, the credibility factor is huge, because what's great about a referral, and this is really important to understand, the closing ratios are so much higher, and we know that but the reason they're so much higher is that trust is like the biggest issue. How many times have you met somebody, maybe it was a cold call, or you get these phone in, call ins, somebody saw you on, through the website, whatever. But it's always hard because at the end of the day, they're mostly crackpots, but I don't know if it's so much that they're crackpots, but they don't have any idea who you are. There's no trust. So either it takes a long time to make that transaction work or it doesn't work. The great thing about getting referrals is the assumption is Chuck works with Andy. And so I'm talking to Andy now. I don't have to vet out Andy. I don't have to worry about Andy because Chuck already did that. And the better the referrer, meaning the person that people know are people that really do their homework, the better it is. And so you really shorten the cycle, by working with people that that and they know. And that's the beauty of referrals. It just shortens up the whole process.
Mm.
And your win percentage, is huge, because they don't have to worry about, whether you're good, whether you're honest, whether they can trust you. That's all done. Now the question is what you're showing them makes sense or not. Yeah.
It totally makes sense. I mean, the efficiency, the effectiveness there is mind blowing, I'm sure. Why do you think? Why do you think or maybe not most, but probably, yeah, probably 51+% of advisors don't ask? Why do
Oh,
you
it's
think that?
way more than that, Chuck. 90% of advisors do not ask for referrals. 90%, 9 out of 10. I mean, that's a
Why,
fact.
and why do you think that is? Is it? Is it fear? Is it their mindset? What's your
Yeah.
observation of why that is?
So why did 90% of advisors not ask for referrals when we know that the most important thing in our career is getting referrals? I think part of it is a fear of rejection, that it's that uncomfortable. We're having a really nice meeting. You're happy. Everything's great. Now I'm going to I'm going to ruin it by putting you on the spot. I think part of it is people don't have enough appreciation for themselves and what they're doing. If you really believe that the world and the people in the world are better served by you serving them and not someone else, then I'm just trying to help people. I just want to improve the situation for people that you love and care about. That's all I'm asking. If I look at it as I'm asking you for something just to benefit myself financially, well, then maybe that feels a little ickier. And maybe that's part of the problem, that people don't give themselves enough credit, for what we're doing here. But to me, everybody's better off working with us than not working with us. And I know that, the care we give, the attention, my team, all the things that we do for these people. We work really, really hard for our clients. So to me, I know that they're better off. So if I know that, then all I've got to do is be intentional about how I live my life and how I carry on, day to day with my prospects and clients. And I'm very intentional. Another thing, Chuck, another great source for referrals that's maybe a little bit easier is kids and parents. We do a lot of business and we get a lot of referrals, and it's an easy one. There's a lot of money with these parents. And so what you do is I don't say, hey, how much do your parents have money? And by the way, can you introduce me to them? What we talk to our clients about and prospects about is, do you know whether or not your parents have done the appropriate planning? And, you can kind of get a sense, if you have a conversation, you get a sense of who has money and who doesn't. Parents, it's in 5 minutes, you can have a conversation. So if we think there's money, if it would be helpful for you, Chuck, I would be more than happy to kind of review your mom and dad's situation. And if they're in New York, for example, and just make sure that they are paying attention to this New York inheritance tax. Because again, remember, if they don't do the right planning, it affects them, right? Because they're the kids, they're the ones inheriting the money. And we just want to make sure that things are in order. Would love to meet them, happy to be of help. And we pick up a lot of it. We go downstream a lot. Now, a lot of the downstream isn't necessarily um, super profitable early. That's really more like planting seeds. But there's two reasons why you want to go downstream. One is that, especially for your biggest clients, we want to know the kids. We had one of those calls last night. My junior, God bless her. I was supposed to be on the call because it was the first call, and I was just so tired. So she said, "Why don't you just get out of here? I can handle the call." Nothing. I mean, they make 200 grand. They have no money. They have two kids. I mean, there's nothing going on there. But mom and dad have a lot of money, and she's the only child. And so, when you think about the value of your business and, does it matter that you've got second generation locked up? It matters a lot. And then every now and then, one of those kids is fabulously successful. And I have a bunch of them as well. And so the idea that we're not having conversations about generational wealth, that, hey, we like to think of our firm as being a generational wealth advisory firm. We want to work with you. We want to work with mom and dad, and we want to work with the kids. We want to serve, all three generations. Let me help you do that. And that's just another way of getting referrals,
Yeah,
and we've had a lot of success with that. Yeah, for sure.
love that. That's a great one. What I heard my interpretation of what you said, why advisors don't ask is it's really the story they're telling themselves. And so what you're saying is the story they're saying is, I'm going to get rejected. I'm maybe not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or whatever that story is. And the story that you're telling over here is if I don't do this, people that my clients care about could be in a bad situation. And this is, you're telling a completely different story than the advisors that don't ask.
Well, look, we have something to offer, right? So we're asking for something. I think people are uncomfortable. Look, I don't like to ask for something for nothing, personally. Like, to me, I want to I want to give as much as I take, in my life. I don't want to take, I mean, life can go both ways, but I think we want to give, maybe we want to give more than we take. Well, if you know that what you're offering has real value, then yes, I'm asking for something. I'm getting something. I'm getting a referral, but I know I'm going to give back so much more. And that's what we have to understand. We're not just asking, we're not just taking, we are giving. And we can't give if we don't have people to give it to. And all we're asking these people to do is facilitate, that process. So, because we want to give more. I mean, I want to do such a great job for these people that it was the greatest, thing that ever happened to them and their families as far as their wealth goes. And and we just were glad to be there to do that. So I do think it's reframing. And then I don't know, is it maybe a little ego where maybe people feel like if you're
Mm.
asking for referrals, that maybe people think you need them and maybe your business isn't what you want it to be, so we pretend. I mean, every advisor you talk to or every time you meet someone that has advice, oh yeah, you might have heard of them. They're like, and when I was in a system, it was really funny because you knew who everybody was. And they would always say the same thing. I work with so and so, in Minneapolis, or I work with so and so in Nashville. Yes, you've probably heard of him. He's like the biggest advisor, because because maybe he was like number one in his agency or something, and then they put this stuff out to people, right? And I'd be like, oh yeah, no, I know him. Yes, very, very huge. Yes, huge advisor. But I don't know. Maybe people feel like if they're asking, if their clients know, maybe they think that they're not big enough. But to me, we're growing a monster firm here, and all we need to do is just bring on more people to help. So we'll serve everyone if we could. Yeah, absolutely.
And what you're saying is the value that you're receiving for the work that you're doing is this compared to what the clients receive. And most
It's
people don't focus. Most advisors don't realize that. They don't think about that.
Yeah, it's a win. Look, it's a win-win. I mean, I'm never comfortable asking for something for nothing. I'm never comfortable. Look, I don't like to ask for favors. I hate asking people for favors. If I ask for a favor, I want to make sure that I can give back twice what I've asked for, because otherwise it makes me really uncomfortable. And maybe a lot of people are like that. But I know that what we're giving back is so much more valuable than what we're asking for. And so to me, yeah, we all have to recognize, that these people are better off with us than without us. And if that's true, and if it's not true, then make it true. Make it true. Get yourself into a place where that can be true. Whether that's hiring more people, better people, learning more, collaborating, getting out of the situation you're in now, but make it so that's true. And then if it is true, then why in the world, do we not want to get introduced to as many people as humanly possible?
Good stuff. Hey, I think this will be my last question for you on this episode. If an advisor wants to develop that referral philosophy and they want to make sure that their conviction is stronger than their prospects or clients' hesitation, what would be a first step or two that you would say, "Hey, take that this upcoming week or this week, and you're going to be well on your way to developing a great referral philosophy and making a major impact in your clients' lives."
So if establishing a philosophy about referrals is the most important thing in our entire career, how do we get ourselves to understand that and to kind of put that into process and to put that to work? What I would say is the first thing I would do is I would look at the clients that I have and I would see where did they come from, especially the ones I really care about. And my guess is, even if you don't ask for referrals, but they were probably a referral, because we get referrals without asking too, right? Every now and then somebody calls and says, hey, my brother or sister, someone needs some help. And then I would start with thinking about, okay, and then I would definitely think about anybody that I asked for a referral and got, and that they were meaningful to me. And then I do this all the time and I think, oh my God, what if that day I did not ask for referrals when I got referred to that person? And what that was a career changer for me. It might have got me into an organization. It might have got me into, a separate, kind of business. It might have opened up, all kinds of crazy doors for me. And then I think, oh my God, how devastating that would have been if I hadn't asked. And then I think, oh, what have I, what have I not gotten by not asking for all those other people? And it's almost like you have to make it like it's an urgency, that you have to walk into a meeting and be able to tell yourself and know that if you do not ask for referrals today, it is very possible, that you basically pulled a diamond out of your pocket and threw it into the ocean,
Sure.
because it was there. and all you had to do was ask. And it doesn't cost anything to ask. It does no harm to ask. And look, I'm not, people, my wife knows this. I am basically an introvert. Which is maybe weird. And people say, there's no way you're an introvert. I can get in front of 10,000 people if I believe in something, and I have no problem. But I am an introvert by nature. I'm not the guy to walk around a party and workroom. It makes me uncomfortable. I get into a crowd full of people behind, my ears hurt. It's like I don't know what that is. I don't want to say anxiety because I don't think of myself as being anxious, but I'm introverted. So I get the idea that sometimes it takes, some courage to muster up, the ask. But what you've got to do is exactly what you said. You have to build, in your own mind, the value proposition has to be so great compared to the discomfort that's created by asking. And then it's all about the power of intention. When you go into a meeting, you have to be prepared. If I'm going into a fact finder, I know what the beginning looks like. I know what the middle looks like, and I know what the end looks like. When I'm reviewing, when I'm just doing a client review, like, I have a client review this afternoon. I've got, 10 names here, so, my guys give me the sheet. I have 10. Now, here's the thing, we were all using these things, AI, information and whatever. And some of it works, and some of it doesn't. But even if I ask this guy, and I run these 10 names by him and he doesn't know any of them, it's not like it's fine, because at the end of the day, I'm asking and I'm saying, well, okay, that was kind of ridiculous. I guess this software doesn't work. So I would say, hey, listen, we're using a new software and there's like 10 names here that, you're supposed to know. I don't know if you know any of them, but do you mind if I run through the names? He's like, no, that's fine. And then I run through them like, wow, 0 for 10, or 2 for 10, not very good. I'll have to talk to my IT people about that. But with that said, is there anybody that you do know that I might just be interested in meeting? And again, I always say, look, I don't care if they're interested. You have no way of knowing if people are interested. They don't have to be looking for an advisor. It doesn't matter. I'm just in the business, especially early in my career, of just meeting people. That's all. I just want to meet people. And at the end of the day, whoever I meet with, there's no downside. I guarantee they will learn something. They might not work with me. They might not be my client, but they will learn something beneficial to them in our meeting. And I think they get that because they just went through the same meeting or they've worked with me for years. And so again, I think it's two things. It's your belief has to be so much stronger than your fear, and that you have to be intentional. It's just like everything else. It's like your diet. It's like your exercise regimen. It's like your, like all the other activities that we do. We have to be intentional. We have to be intentional about what we're saying, what we're looking for, what we're asking for. And part of every meeting has to be that, prepare and be intentional about getting those referrals. If you can double or triple the amount of referrals you get, you'll quadruple or 8 times your practice. Your practice will completely explode. And we all know it. We just, I don't know, we just don't quite get ourselves there. But anyway, but I know it's true. I know it's true.
Great stuff. I mean, this is gold. So thanks for being here, Andy. Thanks for sharing.
No, thanks for having me.
To our listeners, think about one thing, just one thing that you learned from this podcast, or that you relearned, or you were reminded of, just one, and make a commitment to put something in action today, or at least in the next 24 hours that you heard from this podcast that will make an impact on you, your business, your community, your clients, and make it happen. Make it happen. So thanks for being here for the 3rd episode, Andy. 3 down. Let's see, maybe 300 to go. But it's great sharing with you all. Yeah, awesome. Andy, great to see you. Thanks for everything. See you all soon. Take care.
Bye-bye. Herein referred to as One Point BFG. One Point BFG is not affiliated with Advisor Compass. Chuck Downs is not affiliated with One Point BFG, nor compensated by One Point BFG. The opinions expressed by Andy Schwartz are my own personal views and experiences as an investment advisor representative. The information contained herein is provided for informational and discussion purposes only and is not and may not be relied on in any manner as legal, tax, accounting, or regulatory advice, nor does it constitute an offer to sell or a solicitation of an offer to buy any securities, and may not be used or relied upon in connection with any offer or sale of securities. The information, as set forth herein, should not be construed or interpreted as One Point BFG's guarantee of any particular investment outcome or a guarantee of future investment returns or results.